Life in ancient Rome was vast, complex, and deeply structured, an empire built not only by emperors and generals, but by the hands of countless ordinary citizens. While marble monuments and grand forums often dominate our imagination, it was the daily toil of common people that sustained the eternal city. This account offers a window into one such day. Set in the year 120 CE, during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, through the eyes of a free Roman craftsman. You are not a patrician, nor a senator, nor a slave. You are a working citizen, part of a collegium of skilled laborers, and your life is one of honest work, devotion to family, and participation in the pulse of the greatest city in the known world. From the first whisper of dawn to the deepest hush of midnight, what follows is your day, a day like countless others in a city that never truly sleeps. The first light of dawn has not yet broken over the tiled rooftops of Rome when you stir from your sleep. Inside the dim, cramped confines of your third-story apartment in the bustling Suburra district, the air is cool and still, carrying with it the faint, familiar melange of urban life. The earthy musk of damp stone, distant wood smoke, the acrid tang of animal dung, and the subtle staleness of the Tiber River hang in the shadows like an unshakable perfume. You share this small space with your wife, Livia, your 2 sons, and your elderly mother-in-law. Your daughter Claudia has the luxury, if it could be called that, of a threadbare curtain that divides the adjoining space she shares with her grandmother. There are no inner walls in your home, only cleverly placed furniture and hanging cloths to simulate a modicum of privacy. As in most Roman insulae, your unit is modest and functional, but far from comfortable. Constructed primarily of timber and brick, it creaks with every movement and is prone to drafts, and, in the worst of times, fire. You lie on a straw-stuffed mattress stretched over a wooden frame, its springs groaning as you sit up. The straw has long since compressed, offering only the suggestion of softness. You rub your eyes and stretch your arms, mindful not to disturb Livia beside you. The children remain asleep, curled under thin woolen blankets, their breaths rhythmic in the stillness. You reach for your tunic, a knee-length garment of coarse, undyed wool that has seen better days. It smells faintly of sweat and labor, but is serviceable. The thought of affording a fresh one, perhaps in dyed fabric with a decorative border, is the kind of indulgent fantasy you allow yourself only during festivals. You slip it on, your feet padding across the bare floor as you approach a ceramic basin resting on a wooden stand near the window. There is no plumbing in your apartment. Aqueducts feed public fountains and the extravagant private homes of the elite, but you and your neighbors rely on communal facilities. You splash cold water onto your face, stifling a sharp intake of breath as the chill rouses you. Next to the basin sits a shard of polished bronze, used as a makeshift mirror. You glance at your reflection briefly. Dark eyes beneath thick brows, a stubbled chin, sun-weathered skin, and run a calloused hand through your thick, dark hair. In a corner, your few personal belongings are neatly arranged. A small bronze oil lamp, a worn copy of a Virgilian excerpt etched on wax tablets, and the simple wooden figures of your household gods, the lares and penates. Even in poverty, your devotion to tradition remains strong. The figures watch silently from their little niche, as they do every day. Outside, the city murmurs with the earliest stirrings of life. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows. A neighbor's footsteps echo down the stairwell. A slave clatters past the alley below, carrying a bucket, likely fetching water or beginning the day's errands. Rome, eternal and restless, never truly sleeps. You move to the shuttered window, opening it a crack to peer outside. The street 3 floors below is narrow and shadowed by the surrounding insulae. Its paving stones are worn smooth by years of traffic. The faint flicker of an oil torch illuminates a latrina publica at the end of the alleyway, already seeing its first visitors of the day. You will visit it shortly. It is a necessary but unpleasant routine, made only slightly bearable by the shared grumbling of early risers. From the apartment beside yours come the sounds of muffled voices and a crying infant. Another neighbor, a cobbler, is likely preparing for the day as well. In such close quarters, every life is partially shared with another. You step back from the window and turn to gather a small cloth pouch. Inside are a few copper asses, enough to buy some cheap wine or food if needed. You will guard them carefully. Theft is rampant in the poorer districts, especially in the twilight hours when the vigiles, Rome's fire brigade and night watchmen, cannot be everywhere at once. You take a moment to sit by the small family altar, bow your head in a silent invocation. You light a thin stick of incense, watching the smoke curl upward like a wisp of dream, and murmur thanks to the gods for the safety of your family through the night. With a kiss to Livia's forehead and a final glance at your slumbering children, you prepare to descend the 3 flights of creaking stairs to the waking world below. The stairwell is narrow and dimly lit by daylight filtering from above. The lower levels of the building are slightly more desirable, but even those are prone to damp and rat infestations. The very ground floor is often occupied by tabernae, shops or workshops operated by tenants or owners who can afford the additional rent. On your way down, you pass a baker's assistant kneading dough behind a counter, the rich, yeasty scent already beginning to rise. Reaching the street, you stretch once more, taking in the cool pre-dawn air. A few other tradesmen nod in greeting as they pass, some carrying tools, others yawning into calloused hands. The narrow alley opens gradually into wider streets, which will soon teem with carts, slaves, patricians, and animals. For now, it is a rare moment of relative peace. You make your way toward the public fountain at the end of the vicus. There, several early risers have already begun to queue, jugs and amphorae in hand. You fill a small jar with cold, clean water from the spout, nodding politely to an elderly woman ahead of you. She mutters a blessing in return. Returning briefly to the insula, you place the jar next to the basin for Livia and the children to use upon waking. You break off a piece of yesterday's bread and chew slowly, the crust dry and tough. Dipping it into a shallow bowl of watered-down wine helps soften it, and you savor it alongside a solitary fig, today's humble offering for sustenance. With the first rays of sun beginning to illuminate the rooftops, you prepare to meet the day. Another cycle of toil and resilience in the great city of marble and mud. By the time the sun peaks over the slanted rooftops of the insulae, the city is shaking off the last vestiges of night. Rome's pulse quickens. You hear it in the hollow ring of metal shutters being thrown open, in the clip-clop of hooves from the first delivery carts, and in the quiet urgency of slaves scurrying through the alleys with amphorae and baskets, running errands for their masters before the patricians even rise. Your humble breakfast is finished, stale bread soaked in watered-down wine, made slightly more tolerable by a single fig, its skin split with ripeness. On better days, there might be a sliver of goat cheese, but not today. Today is for frugality. You wrap a cloth sash around your waist and prepare to leave, ducking beneath the threshold of your cramped apartment. You are a Faber Tignarius, a carpenter by trade, part of a collegium, a guild of fellow craftsmen that provides a measure of security and collective voice, though not much else. Your labor sustains the skeleton of Rome itself. Wooden scaffolds for new construction, doors for shops and villas, furnishings for insulae, your hands have touched the timbers of this city in quiet, invisible ways. As you descend again, this time not for water but to head to your workshop, the stairwell smells of smoke and last night's chamber pots. The occasional creak beneath your feet reminds you how much you despise poor woodwork. Whoever built this stair used green timber, warped and weak. You make a mental note, as you often do, that if the Dominus ever hired real craftsmen, the building might not feel like it would collapse in the next good storm. Outside, the air carries more sounds now, vendors calling out greetings as they set up their stalls, the hiss of morning fires being stoked, and the low chant of a procession of Vestal virgins somewhere off in the direction of the Forum. You adjust the small leather pouch at your belt. Inside are your few copper asses and a couple of nails wrapped in cloth, always good to have on hand. Livia stands at the doorway, holding the baby with one arm, her other hand resting on your eldest son's shoulder. Marcus, your boy of 10 winters, will be joining you today. He is apprenticing to learn the family trade, and though he grumbles some mornings, you see pride in his eyes. He carries a bundle of tools wrapped in cloth, mallet, chisel, and a marking stick. His hands still soft, though calluses have begun to form. You kiss Livia's cheek. Her skin is warm and worn from long hours of domestic toil. Don't forget the laundry, she reminds you softly. If the washerwoman's not drunk again, you nod, promising without words. Claudia, still half asleep, peeks from behind the curtain. You smile at her and wave. The two of you head out into the city proper. Marcus skips a little to keep pace with your stride. Already the day is heating, though the shadows still stretch long across the paving stones. You pass neighbors preparing their own days, a fishmonger gutting yesterday's unsold catch, the scent foul but familiar, a potter's wheel beginning to spin outside a taberna, wet clay taking shape and across the way, a money changer's stall, shutters still being unlatched by his sleepy-eyed apprentice. Your workshop lies near the Porta Esquilina, inside a broad open yard where carpenters and stonecutters mingle, a bustle of tools and shouting and dust. On the way there, you cross beneath an arch of aqueducts, the mighty arteries that feed Rome her water. You pause a moment, lifting your eyes to the marvel above, engineered by minds sharper than yours, but made possible by the hands of men like you. When you arrive, several other members of your collegium are already present. Gaius, the oldest among you, is sharpening a plane blade with methodical strokes, nodding as you pass. Titus, barely older than Marcus, is hoisting a plank onto a sawhorse. The smell of sawdust, tar, and linseed oil fills the air. This, at least, feels like home. You find your corner, roll out your tools, and get to work. Today's labor involves shaping door frames for a bathhouse under renovation on the Caelian Hill. You take measurements using a cord marked at intervals, then score lines into the pine with your chisel. Your mallet strikes in even, practiced rhythms. Marcus watches closely, mimicking your movements with exaggerated care. You correct his grip. Let the chisel do the work, you remind him. By mid-morning, your tunic clings to your back with sweat. You take a break and drink from a shared waterskin. The conversation among the guild turns to politics, as it often does. Someone mentions a new edict from Hadrian concerning land reform. Another complains about grain prices. A few joke about the praetors, useless as ever unless a bribe needs collecting. Marcus asks if one day he'll be able to design furniture for a senator's domus. You laugh, ruffling his hair. Only if you make joints tighter than mine. He beams. You notice a group of slaves passing by, dragging timber and marble on a crude cart. One meets your eyes. He's young, maybe 17, his tunic in tatters. You remember that you could have been him had fortune twisted a little differently. You nod solemnly, and he nods back before the overseer barks an order and snaps his whip. As the sun climbs higher, you and your fellow craftsmen press on. Work in Rome doesn't wait for comfort. You strike, shape, saw, and smooth. By the time the hour of tertia approaches, the first beads of pitch-black resin are melting in a nearby brazier, ready to be used for waterproofing planks. The city roars around you now, an orchestra of 10,000 tasks. Carts clatter, hammers ring, citizens shout, dogs bark, and through it all, Rome breathes, chaotic, magnificent, and enduring. And you, a small cog in its ceaseless motion, are part of the rhythm. You wipe your brow, step back to assess your work, and place your hand on your son's shoulder. Another day has begun in the eternal city. The sun has climbed higher now, gilding the rooftops of Rome in amber light. The air has warmed, though the stone beneath your feet remains cool. You feel it through the soles of your sandals each time you shift your weight at the workbench. Around you, the steady rhythm of industry continues, a chorus of tapping mallets, rasping saws, and occasional shouted instructions. You pause for a moment to inspect the joint you've just shaped. A mortise and tenon, meant for a bathhouse door. Satisfied, you signal Marcus to bring over a new board. His brow is furrowed in concentration as he carries it carefully, determined not to scuff the smooth edge. You nod to him approvingly and show him how to align the beam with the frame. Nearby, the scent of pine resin mixes with the sharper tang of pitch boiling in a ceramic bowl over a brazier. One of the younger apprentices is tasked with stirring it, occasionally flinching as the viscous black liquid bubbles and spits. The pitch will be used to seal wooden joints against moisture, a necessity for any work destined for the city's bathhouses or aqueduct systems. Occasionally, voices rise above the sounds of labor. One of the older men recounts a tale of a near collapse on a construction site near the Forum. "They used olive wood for the beam," he scoffs. "Fine for firewood, not for holding up a roof." There's a murmur of agreement. You chime in with your own thoughts on preferred timbers: oak for strength, cypress for resisting rot, pine for ease of shaping. Marcus listens intently, absorbing every word. You remember being just like him, eyes wide, eager to learn, convinced that mastery was only a few good projects away. In time, he'll learn that true skill in carpentry comes not from speed, but from precision and patience. As you work, a small group of laborers from a neighboring yard pass by, carrying marble tiles meant for a wealthy patron's atrium. Their tunics are sweat-stained, and their backs stooped, but they exchange nods with your group. One of them, a Gaul with a heavy accent, pauses to admire your work. "Clean joints," he says approvingly before moving on. You take that compliment to heart. A craftsman's pride lies not in coin, though you could use more of that, but in recognition by those who understand the labor. When the sun is nearly overhead, a brief lull settles over the yard. It's not an official break. There's no such thing in your line of work. But many of you take the moment to stretch your backs and chew on bits of dried fruit or bread. You retrieve a small pouch from your satchel, offering Marcus a slice of dried fig and a crust of barley bread. It's coarse, a little dry, but it fills the belly. Titus pulls out a sliver of smoked pork, the scent tempting enough to draw envious glances. He grins and offers a bite to those nearby. Even in hardship, there is camaraderie. Jests are exchanged, and a bawdy song begins before being quickly shushed. No need to attract the ire of a patrolling lictors, should one pass by. A few men speculate on whether the annona, the state grain dole, might be disrupted next week due to unrest in Ostia. You sigh. The grain supply is the lifeblood of Rome's poor. Even a brief interruption would mean longer lines, smaller rations, and higher prices. You make a mental note to speak to Livia later, to set aside a few coins just in case. Marcus watches the older men as they banter, and you catch a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. He sees them not just as workers, but as a band of brothers who understand their place in the city's living body. Then it's back to work. No bell rings, just the tacit agreement that the rest has been enough. The sun is high now, casting short shadows. Your tools are warm to the touch. The pitch is ready. You ladle a bit onto the joint and watch it ooze into the cracks before pressing the pieces together. The seal is tight. Marcus struggles with a stubborn knot in the wood. He curses softly. You place your hand over his and show him how to angle the chisel just so, letting the blade slide along the grain. Work with the wood, not against it, you say. It's an old lesson, but one worth repeating. At the edge of the yard, a minor commotion breaks out. A collapsed scaffold at another construction site nearby. A runner delivers the news, breathless. No deaths, thankfully, just injuries. Poorly secured ropes, someone says. Everyone in your yard silently checks the knots on their own lashings. A reminder, Rome is always building and always on the verge of breaking. Before long, a client arrives, a Leno, a slave dealer, interested in commissioning furniture for his establishment. He's dressed well in a dyed tunic and with rings on each hand, but his eyes are cold and calculating. You listen to his request for a set of benches and a new doorway arch. Gaius speaks with him, keeping his tone deferential but firm. There's little love for such men among your kind, but business is business. When the Leno leaves, Gaius mutters, "His coin's good, even if his soul's not." A few of the men nod. You turn your attention back to your tools, focusing on your work. The sun inches toward Merides, midday, and sweat drips freely down your brow. You swipe your arm across your forehead and look over at Marcus. He's busy sanding the edge of a board, tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth in concentration. You allow yourself a moment of quiet pride. This is your life, hard, honest, bound to Rome by grain and stone, nail and beam. And though your name may never be etched in marble or remembered in the histories, your labor is built into the bones of the eternal city. And that is enough. As the sun reaches its zenith, casting short, harsh shadows beneath the arcades and awnings, the heat of the day settles like a heavy cloak over the city. Your tunic clings to your back, damp with sweat, and the air smells of sun-baked dust, pitch, and sweat. Tools are set down, and the work slows, not because the job is done, there is always more, but because even the hardest working men must rest when the sun glares down with the full weight of Sol Invictus. You retreat into the shade of a nearby portico, wiping your brow with the hem of your tunic. Marcus follows, silent and observant, still too young to realize that these quiet moments are as much a part of the job as hammer and chisel. Around you, the men of your collegium sprawl on makeshift stools or lean against timber piles, chewing slowly through what food they've brought or bought from passing vendors. Today you unwrap a parcel Livia packed, more barley bread, harder now than in the morning, along with a handful of olives and a boiled egg. You crack it open carefully and sprinkle a bit of garum from a small clay flask, just a drop, to add its tangy sharpness. Marcus grimaces at the smell but eats dutifully. Nearby, Gaius shares salted nuts with old Rufus, and the two men murmur about some political affair in the forum. You half listen but can't follow all of it. The politics of Rome are like the Tiber, deep, twisting, and often dangerous. A cart rattles by in the alley beyond the yard, pulled by a pair of oxen and driven by a shouting boy no older than your middle child. He's bringing amphorae from the port, sloshing with wine or oil or brine. The boy's voice cracks as he hollers at a stray dog to move from his path. A few men chuckle. Dogs and boys. Neither ever listen. The city around you bustles still, though a sluggishness now tugs at every motion. Even the crowds seem less urgent. You can hear the distant murmur of priests chanting at a nearby shrine, their Latin crisp and melodic. The sounds of commerce never truly stop in Rome, but at Sexta they ease, soften, become background noise to the stillness of the sun's peak. A few of the apprentices lie back in the shade and doze. Not Marcus. He watches you, your hands, the movement of your jaw as you chew, the way you tilt your bowl of water just so to drink without spilling. He learns from watching, and you let him. Words are good, but example is better. Gaius, ever practical, uses the pause to inspect a cartload of timber delivered earlier that morning. He calls you over. Together you look through the planks. Some are warped. One has visible wormholes. You make a note of which to set aside. A few are excellent, straight, well-dried, fragrant with the clean scent of cypress. You mark them for the bathhouse contract. Then come the whispers of a temple procession nearby. You hear the high, clear notes of a flute and the tinkling rhythm of small bronze bells. A group of Vestal virgins is passing along the main road, flanked by lictors and priestly attendants. Though you cannot see them clearly from your position, the reverence in the air is tangible. You stand, as do others, in a mark of respect. Marcus mirrors your movements, his expression solemn. Even in this sprawling city, with its teeming masses and noisy marketplaces, the divine is never far. A few men break off to relieve themselves or refill their water skins at a nearby fountain, one of many scattered throughout the city thanks to Rome's aqueducts. The water, while cool, tastes faintly of stone and metal, But you drink deeply, letting the chill cut through the heat lingering in your chest. You splash some on your face and neck, sighing as the wetness soaks into your skin. One of the younger apprentices finds a patch of sunlight and begins sketching a crude drawing in the dust with a stick, perhaps of a chariot or a gladiator, judging by the shapes. You remember doing the same at his age, when your father brought you to this very yard. The names and faces have changed, but the rhythm of the work remains the same. Old Rufus begins to hum an old military tune, something from the Germanic campaigns decades ago, and a few of the others quietly join in. The song is slow, almost mournful, and for a moment the bustling city around you feels distant. You wonder briefly where the years have gone. You were young not long ago. Now you carry tools in one hand and the future in the other, watching it take shape in Marcus's eyes. The midday break ends without ceremony. The sun begins its slow descent, but the heat lingers. You stretch your arms, roll your shoulders, and begin again. There's a bench to finish, a plank to smooth, and a shipment to prepare for delivery by nightfall. Your hammer feels heavier now. The chisel digs more stubbornly into the wood. But the work remains yours to do, and you take pride in that. Marcus lifts his mallet and begins tapping dowels into place, his tongue poking out in focus once more. You watch him for a long moment, then return to your task. The eternal city does not sleep, but it does pause briefly at noon, and you, one of its countless beating hearts, beat on. The sun still burns overhead, though its bite has softened. The shadows stretch longer now, reaching under arches and creeping across the worn cobblestones of the city. You can feel the shift in the rhythm of the day. Though it's not cool yet, the air seems to stir more often, and you take shorter breaths as the heat ebbs by slow degrees. You flex your fingers and return to your work, lifting the chisel once again to shape a beam of fir. Its resinous scent clings to your hands. Marcus steadies the plank at one end, careful, focused, already with the quiet discipline of a man not yet grown. You nod to him, and he responds with a short, silent glance. The two of you have no need for many words here. Nearby, Gaius is arguing with a supplier, a leathery-faced man from Campania who insists the load of cedar was cut fresh only weeks ago. You overhear him claim it's worth the high price, that the grain is flawless and that the gods themselves would admire its scent. Gaius is skeptical. You smile faintly, remembering when you were younger, more easily convinced by a well-spoken merchant. In the yard, the tools ring again, hammers on wood, rasps, scraping, a saw whining through dry lumber. There's something almost musical about it, like a slow chorus of labor. You've known this song since you were a boy. The smell of sawdust, the ache in your shoulder, the dust on your skin, they are constants, as familiar as the stone walls of the insula where you live. Marcus helps you assemble a frame meant for a wealthy patrician's villa. It will be paneled in ivory or bronze, no doubt, but your work, the structure beneath, is what holds it together. Without the hands of men like you, the villas of the elite would collapse in a month. The irony doesn't escape you. A runner from the Collegium enters the workshop, delivering messages scrawled on wax tablets. One is for you. It's from the foreman of a neighboring construction project, a bathhouse being built near the Subura. They're short on manpower. He asks if you might spare a few hours tomorrow. You scratch a quick response with your stylus, depends on your timber, not your coin, and send it back with the runner. Your hands are rough, but they are steady. You admire your son as he drives a dowel into place. The rhythm is improving. The grip is stronger. Soon, he'll craft his own pieces without your guidance. That pride is quiet, but it warms your chest. Beyond the yard, the sounds of the city grow louder again. Children's laughter echoes from a nearby alley, mixed with the creak of wagons and the bark of traders. A seller of sweet wine passes by, sloshing his cart with bronze ladles and calling out his wares in a nasal drawl. A few coins change hands. Rufus gets a cup. You decline. Too sweet. Too early. You glance at the sky. A faint line of clouds builds over the distant hills. Nothing ominous, just enough to promise cooler winds by evening. With luck, the night will not be stifling. Your arms are sore. The grain of the wood has resisted you all day, like a mule refusing the harness. You've had better days in the workshop, but fewer as important. One more hour and the day's work will be complete. Gaius finally makes peace with the Campanian merchant and begins hauling timber into the shaded corner of the yard. You help him stack it. It's heavy work, and the muscles in your legs burn as you lift and turn. Marcus struggles but doesn't complain. You admire that. He is leaner than you were at his age, but he's wiry, and there's strength in him that will grow with time and use. A sparrow flits down to peck at crumbs near the water trough. No one disturbs it. It hops, pecks, then flutters away again. For a moment, you are still, just watching it disappear over the tiled roof. From the road, a commotion arises. A burst of laughter, a shout, a low rumble of voices gathering. You step out to look. A group of soldiers is passing by, their bronze helmets glinting in the afternoon sun. They're likely returning from patrol, dusty and red-faced. Civilians give them space. You make eye contact with one, a younger man, not unlike your brother who served in Hispania. He nods. You nod back. You return to the bench. The sun has begun to slant, and it casts golden light across the yard. The last stretch of work begins, repairing a cracked doorframe from a magistrate's office, fitting a new lintel beam into a merchant's shop frame, sanding edges smooth with pumice. The apprentices begin to gather the tools, wiping down blades, coiling ropes, sweeping the shavings into piles. You inspect your day's labor. The bench you built is sturdy. The joints hold. It's not beautiful, but it will last years. Marcus stands beside you, his tunic smeared with dust and streaked with sweat. You hand him a rag. Wipe the tools before you leave, you remind him. He nods. The workday draws to its close not with a bell or horn, but with the slowing of hands and the silence that comes when the body knows it has done enough. A few men begin to talk again, about the races, about taxes, about a grain shortage rumored to affect the Aventines soon. You listen, idly, but your thoughts turn to home, to Livia and the smell of lentils simmering on the hearth, to your youngest daughter's voice asking for a story, to the hard-earned comfort of a stool by the brazier. Marcus brings you a wooden bowl of water. You rinse your hands and face. The dust runs off in streaks, and the coolness revives you just enough to carry you through the evening. Nona fades into Vesper. The sun leans low over the rooftops. Rome, mighty and eternal, continues on, but your day's work, carved into grain and fiber, is done. The shadows are long now, the warmth of the day ebbing away into soft amber light. The sky above Rome is streaked with pink and gold, fading into a deeper azure. Your tools are stowed, your tunic still damp from the labor of the afternoon. You step out of the yard into the narrow streets, with Marcus beside you, and begin the walk home. The street is uneven, pocked with wheel ruts and ancient stones. It winds between tall insulae, the apartment buildings of Rome's working class. You pass a bakery shuttering its windows, its ovens still warm, the scent of charred crust lingering in the air. A group of children dart past, chasing one another with shouts and laughter, sandals slapping the stone. Vendors are packing up for the day. One woman scoops olives into clay pots, another folds her cloth over the day's unsold garum jars. A butcher hangs the last cuts of meat on a rack for display, dog-tired, red-handed, but humming as he works. An old man plays a reed pipe at the corner, and someone tosses him a bronze as they pass. As you near your insula, you're greeted by familiar voices. Neighbors lean from windows above, chatting across balconies strung with drying linens. Livia's face appears from the stairwell entrance, smiling as she spots you and Marcus. You feel the day's burden ease at the sight of her. Her arms are dusted with flour. She's been baking flatbread, and her hair is pinned loosely, streaked with the steam of the kitchen hearth. Inside, the single-room apartment smells of lentils and garlic, with a hint of fish from the preserved mackerel laid out in olive oil. The hearth's glow still lingers, casting flickers on the walls. Your youngest, Julia, rushes to embrace you, gripping your leg with the energy only children possess. You hoist her easily with your tired arms. She smells of ash and wild herbs, having spent the day playing near the communal garden. Dinner is simple but satisfying. Livia ladles lentil stew into wooden bowls and passes around flatbread baked earlier in the day. There's a plate of olives and a bit of goat cheese saved from yesterday's market. You uncork a clay amphora of watered wine, sour but refreshing, and pour it into terracotta cups. Everyone eats together seated on stools or cushions, cross-legged, with the door ajar to let in the breeze. Conversation is light. Livia mentions a quarrel at the fountain that morning, two women accusing each other of cutting the line. Marcus speaks of the cedar shipment, recounting how Gaius bargained with the merchant from Campania. You nod along, adding little. The food and rest are enough for now. After supper, you rise and step into the street for fresh air. The neighbors are out as well. An old couple shares a bench beside the entryway, and boys play dice in the dust nearby. A group of older men debates politics, always politics. One claims grain prices will rise again. Another curses the new magistrate for raising the vigilized patrol taxes. You listen silently, absorbing the rhythm of their voices like background music. You pass a nearby taberna, its door flung wide, the scent of wine and sweat spilling out into the street. A few men from the Collegium are already inside, gathered around a worn table, cups in hand. They wave you in, and for a moment you're tempted. But the fatigue in your shoulders urges you homeward, and you offer only a wave. Returning inside, you find Marcus helping Julia with a wooden puzzle you carved last year. Livia begins folding cloth and brushing ash from the floor. You wash your hands and face with the water left in the basin, the coolness a balm against your cheeks. A neighbor knocks, a widow named Sabina, and borrows a jar of vinegar. Livia greets her warmly. You overhear them discuss Sabina's eldest, who's seeking a position in a local workshop. You consider offering him an apprenticeship under Gaius, if he's willing to work hard. As the night draws in, you light an oil lamp set in a bronze dish, the flame fluttering softly. Livia braids Julia's hair while humming a hymn to Bonadia, and you feel the calm settle around you like a cloak. You take out a bit of wax and a stylus to record expenses from the day, timber costs, lunch coins spent, a few denarii you set aside for a new saw blade. You try to keep your accounts balanced. It's not an exact science, but you know every coin matters. Marcus asks you questions about carpentry, how to tell if a beam is seasoned, or what woods are best for framing. You answer with slow, deliberate words, watching his eyes light up with understanding. He's learning, truly learning, and that fills you with quiet pride. Outside, the light dims further. A brazier crackles softly, and the occasional laughter of passers-by floats through the shuttered window. You take a moment to polish your tools, wiping the sweat and dust from your chisels, straightening the handles of your mallet and adze. Eventually, Julia is tucked into the family bed, a wide straw mattress with woolen blankets, and Marcus rolls out his own mat near the hearth. You check the shutters, making sure they're latched. The night may be calm, but Rome is never truly quiet. Before sleep, you and Livia sit together near the brazier. You speak softly, mostly about the children and your work. She tells you of a friend's wedding planned for next month. You joke that you'll need a new tunic to look presentable, and she swats your arm with mock offense. She asks about your health, about your back, your joints. You smile and wave it off, though the aches linger. She knows, of course. Her eyes linger on your hands, thick with callus and history. She offers to rub oil into your shoulders, and you accept, grateful. The flame dances low, the warmth against your legs, the steady rhythm of Livia's breathing beside you, the far-off murmur of the street. All of it feels like home. You think briefly of your parents, long gone, of your first day as a carpenter's apprentice, of the days when the city overwhelmed you, when you felt like a pebble among giants. Now you are one of many, but you are known. You are part of this place. You finally stretch out on the mattress, letting the straw compress beneath your back, but sleep does not claim you just yet. You lie quietly in the warm hush of the room, letting your eyes drift toward the flickering lamplight on the ceiling. Livia rests beside you now, her breathing steady, her hand briefly brushing yours. But your mind is alert, still busy with tomorrow's thoughts, lumber shipments to track, an order from the Tignery Collegium that needs finishing, and the possibility of taking Sabina's boy on as an apprentice. There's always one more thing to consider. You rise again quietly, careful not to wake the others, and return to the hearth. The coals are still glowing, and you stir them gently, adding a bit of kindling. The warmth grows, and you sit there on a stool, arms folded, watching the small flame dance. From the street outside, a distant laugh echoes and fades. Somewhere in the insula above, someone shifts in their sleep. Rome is winding down, but never truly still. You decide to step outside for a moment before returning to your evening tasks. The door creaks as you open it, and the cool night air brushes your face. The stars above are dimmed by city soot, but a few still gleam through the haze. You lean against the doorway and exhale slowly, feeling the tightness in your shoulders loosen. Tomorrow will come soon enough, but for now the day is not yet done. Night in Rome carries its own kind of rhythm, a softened pulse under the weight of sleep, yet never completely still. As you lean against the doorway, the city seems quieter now, but sounds still echo faintly. Sandals scraping stone, a dog barking in the distance, the clatter of amphorae as a tavern keeper closes shop. You linger in the cool air, taking in the damp smell of stone and smoke. The moon casts pale light over the rooftops, barely filtering between the insulae. Lanterns still flicker in upper windows. Some neighbors are finishing their evening rituals. A woman muttering prayers to the household lares, a man checking the lock on his door twice. The taverna nearby has quieted but not gone still. Laughter still rises sporadically, along with the occasional burst of song. You wonder who can afford to drink so late and so freely. You return inside and sit again at the hearth. The coals have settled into a soft red glow. Carefully, you wrap a half-finished wooden hinge in cloth and tuck it under a stool for tomorrow. The room is dim now, and the scent of garlic and hearth smoke hangs in the air like a memory. Livia has fallen asleep where she sat, her head leaning against the wall, the braid she'd done for Julia still trailing across her shoulder. You gently rise and draw a thin woolen blanket over her, tucking it around her knees. She stirs but doesn't wake. You glance over at Marcus and Julia, both already breathing softly, lost in the comforting stillness of sleep. The flickering lamp beside the hearth is nearly spent. You adjust the wick and sit again. Now, with the quiet firmly settled around you, your thoughts are louder. You consider tomorrow's tasks, checking on the cracked frame in the bathhouse, sharpening your adze, buying more nails from the forge near the Forum Holitorium. There's also a civic inspection scheduled next week. Rumor says new standards are being enforced on all building trades. You'll need to speak with Gaius about preparing your worksite. You pick up a small wax tablet and stylus again, jotting down notes by lamplight. The wax is scarred with layers of past calculations, scratched names, and reminders long completed. You smooth a section with the blunt end of the stylus and make new marks. Timber, cedar, pine, nails 4 handfuls, resupply oil. Outside, a faint noise draws your attention. You pause, listening. Soft footsteps and hushed voices drift from the street. It could be patrolling vigils, or perhaps some late-night scuffle. You step to the window and carefully peek through the shutter. 2 figures walk the alley, cloaked and hunched, murmuring in hurried Latin. One carries a sack, its contents indiscernible. They disappear around the corner without incident. You stay at the window a moment longer, ensuring all is calm before drawing the shutter closed once more. Rome sleeps in fits and starts, and prudence is always wise. You decide to tend to your tools. The box in the corner holds your essentials: chisels, saws, a plumb line, and your prized folding rule. You check the edge of each blade, rubbing them lightly with oil. The wooden handles, smoothed from years of use, feel comforting in your hands, like extensions of your own flesh. You take special care with the saw, inspecting its teeth, making a mental note to file them later. Beside the tools lies a small carved token, an offering to Minerva. It's been in your family for years, passed down from your father. You pick it up and rub the edge with your thumb. You whisper a quiet thanks, not a formal prayer, but an acknowledgement. You're still here, still working, still able. You rise again and stretch your back, stiff from the day's labor. From the wooden peg on the wall, you retrieve your light outer cloak. You decide on a short walk, just to the fountain at the crossroads. The water will be cold, but refreshing, and perhaps you'll clear your mind before returning. The streets are mostly empty, the bustle of the day replaced by a deep hum. A stray cat darts from beneath a cart. You nod to a passing night watchman, torch in hand, who returns your greeting with a grunt. He recognizes you, not by name perhaps, but by presence. Faces seen day after day become familiar. At the fountain, the water trickles steadily from a spout carved in the likeness of a lion's head. You cup your hands and drink. The cold bites at your teeth, but it's clean, flowing from the aqueducts that trace like veins across the empire. You fill a small jug and sling it over your shoulder before heading back. Passing a darkened doorway, you overhear quiet weeping. You pause, uncertain. A young woman sits alone, knees to chest, cloaked but trembling. You approach slowly, gently asking if she needs aid. She looks up, startled but not fearful. After a pause, she shakes her head. "Just tired," she says. You nod, leave her a small fig wrapped in cloth from your pocket, and move on. Rome is vast, and kindness often finds little reward, but it's yours to give nonetheless. Back home, the apartment is as you left it. You place the jug by the hearth and quietly unfasten your cloak. Livia is still sleeping upright. You ease down beside her and lean gently against her shoulder. She stirs again, eyes half opening, murmuring your name. "All is well," you whisper. She nods, resting her head against yours. The oil lamp flickers one final time before the wick gutters out. The fire's glow is fading, and outside, the first hints of deeper silence settle in. Rome's brief moment of true quiet between the last drunks stumbling home and the first bakers rising to stoke their ovens. You do not yet sleep. The night still belongs to you. You sit in the dim warmth, surrounded by the people and tools that shape your life. You are no senator, no soldier, no poet to be remembered in marble. But you are a Roman, of the earth, of labor, of family, and that is enough. Midnight has come, yet the rhythms of the city continue in hushed undercurrents. The sounds outside have dwindled further, leaving only the creak of timber in the walls and the occasional murmur of a distant owl or barking dog. You remain seated at the edge of the hearth, the cooling embers now little more than a red suggestion of heat. The air grows colder, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Livia has slipped fully into sleep beside you, her breathing deep and rhythmic. You rise without disturbing her and walk quietly across the room. Marcus has kicked off his blanket in the night, and you gently pull it back over his legs. Julia murmurs in her sleep, turning on her side, clutching her little doll, a simple thing of cloth and straw that Livia made. You pause and watch them for a moment, grateful. You step outside once more, drawn by instinct or habit. The night is damp, and your breath clouds in front of your face. The torches once carried by watchmen are now replaced by long shadows and starlight. The moon has dipped lower in the sky, casting silver light across the stones of the alley. A few doors down, a shadow moves, an old man hobbling along with a bucket, no doubt heading to the communal latrine. Rome's facilities are shared, and even the necessity of nature brings neighbors face to face. You nod as he passes. He grunts in return. Back indoors, you light a small tallow candle, just enough to see. You return to your workbench and unwrap a small carving, an intricate leg for a stool commissioned by a nearby domus. You run your fingers along the lines, inspecting the progress. Then, slowly, carefully, you begin to shave the edges, keeping your strokes minimal so as not to disturb the stillness of the night. Working under candlelight is not ideal. The flickering shadows play tricks on the grain, but the solitude offers its own reward. The children sleep, the street is quiet, and your mind is focused. You remember lessons from your own master, decades ago now, echoing in your memory. Measure twice, carve once. The gods may forgive mistakes, but clients don't. A mouse skitters across the far end of the room, searching for crumbs. You pause, waiting. It disappears behind a jar. Life in the insula is never far from nature. Rats, insects, and pigeons all have their place here, often uninvited. You make a mental note to set another trap tomorrow. The candle burns low. You take one last look at your work, satisfied with the progress, and clean your tools. You store them back in their box, carefully wrapping each one in cloth. The wax tablet is brought out again. You scratch a final note into the smooth surface. Stool leg, 70% complete. Finish by Nona tomorrow. You sit again near the hearth, now almost dark. Without fire or lamp, the room falls into true shadow, shaped only by moonlight slipping through the window's wooden slats. You rest your head back against the wall and close your eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. Rome breathes. You can hear it in the distant flow of the aqueducts, the creak of beams under pressure, the soft hum of 1,000 dreams unfolding above, below, and beside you. It's in this moment you feel most Roman. Not when working or earning your keep, but in these quiet hours, alone yet connected, insignificant yet vital. The cock will crow in a few hours, and the cycle will begin again. But for now, you are suspended in time. You rise once more, return to Livia's side, and lay a gentle hand on hers. No words are needed. The night is not yet over, but your place in it is sure.